I work night shift as a medical courier in Pennsylvania. It's not as weird a job as it sounds. Mostly I transport things like blood samples, surgical tools, the occasional organ for transplant, that sort of thing. I've been doing it for a little over 4 years now, and the job has its ups and downs. Some nights are slow, just driving through quiet streets with the radio humming low. Other nights, you see things you can't unsee. This story happened last winter, sometime around mid-January. There was a storm blowing in from the west, and I had already done 2 runs between hospitals. Just before midnight, I got a call on the dispatcher radio telling me to make one final pickup before heading home. This one was from a smaller hospital outside of Harrisburg St. James Regional. I'd only been there a few times before, but I remembered it being tucked back behind a wooded road. The kind of place you wouldn't stumble across unless you were looking for it. They wanted me to pick up a sealed transport unit from their pathology department. That usually meant a small, secure cooler, probably blood or preserved tissue. The kind of thing that needs to be signed in and out. No big deal. I remember the drive up the hill to the hospital was already slick with ice, and the place looked almost abandoned when I pulled into the side lot. Most lights were off, no cars except a few ambulances in the distance. I buzzed in, through the side entrance, and followed the dim signs down to the basement. The hospital's pathology and morgue were both down there, slant, clean hallways, and that distinct sterile smell hanging in the air. I rang the buzzer by the pathology doors and waited. A minute passed, then I buzzed again. Nothing. I was about to head back up and call dispatch when I heard a soft buzz from the door. It unlocked. Inside. The lights were on, but the place was completely empty. No receptionist, no lab tech, just that hum of machines and the faint beep of equipment. There was a clipboard on the counter with my name on it, and next to it, a sealed cooler marked biohazard cold storage. I signed, double-checked the tag, and was about to leave when something made me pause. There was a door at the end of the hallway that was slightly ajar. Past it, the lights were flickering like a fluorescent bulb on its last legs. It wasn't where I needed to go, but something about that open door drew my eye. I should have just turned round, but I didn't. I walked toward it and peeked in. It was the morgue. I could see the rows of storage units lining the far wall, the kind with metal doors and numbered labels. The table in the center of the room was empty, but the light above it buzzed like it had a short end. That's when I saw something move, not fast, just barely. I froze. At the far end, one of the body storage doors wasn't fully closed. It was hanging, open about 2 inches. I didn't notice it at first because the number plate was missing. Just an empty slot where the tag should have been as I stared at it. I noticed something even stranger. There was condensation on the edge of the door. That shouldn't happen. Those units are supposed to stay sealed and dry. My brain tried to write it off. Maybe someone had just pulled a body and forgot to lock it shut. Maybe someone was still working back here and stepped out. But the hairs on my neck were standing up, and I couldn't hear a single sound. Not a footstep, not a voice, just that buzzing light and the sound of my own breathing. I backed up, didn't run, didn't turn my back. I just stepped away slow, holding the cooler like it weighed 100 pounds. I left that door open. Let someone else deal with it. Back in my car, I slammed the door and sat there for a second, breathing hard. I felt stupid, like I was freaking myself out over nothing. But just as I reached for the ignition, I saw something in my side mirror. The back door of the hospital The1 I'd come out, OFAD opened just a crack. And standing there, just barely in the light, was a person. They were wearing a hospital gown, no coat, no shoes. I stared. The figure didn't move, didn't wave or call out, just stood there, half in shadow, with their head tilted slightly to the side, like they were watching me. I couldn't make out their face. It was too dark. But what I did see was this pale, raw skin like freezer burn or something worse. And in their hand, they were holding something. It looked like a surgical mask, or maybe a tag. I didn't stick around to figure it out. I drove off, tires slipping slightly on the icy lot, and I didn't look back. I called dispatch as soon as I hit the main road and reported that no staff was present, but the pickup was complete. I didn't mention the figure at the door. I don't know if it was some patient who wandered down there. I don't know if it was a joke or a hallucination. But something about that moment still won't let go of me. It didn't feel right. Hospitals are strange places, especially at night, full of life, death, and everything in between. But that basement felt wrong, like something was waiting, watching, or maybe even following. I haven't gone back to St. James since. I used to clean offices overnight for a property management company in Southern Oregon. Most of the job was simple: vacuuming, wiping down desks, taking out trash. Nothing glamorous, but it paid well enough, and I liked the quiet. Just me, my earbuds, and the rhythm of routine. I'd been doing the job for about a year when they added a new building to my route, Building 6. It was a 4-story structure, mostly leased by a medical research group. From what I heard, most of the employees worked 9 to 5, and nobody stayed past 7 o'clock. That worked fine for me because I usually got there around 11 o'clock p.m. for first night in Building 6. I noticed it felt off. It wasn't the way it looked. Everything was modern, clean, well lit. But the air inside felt heavy, like a place that hadn't been opened in a long time. The kind of stale you'd expect in an attic, not a commercial building. The elevator creaked a little, which was weird for a newer place. And the 4th floor smelled faintly like ammonia and something else I couldn't place. Like damp fabric, or maybe meat left out too long. Still, I did my rounds. The first 3 floors were nothing. Just office chairs, printers, break rooms with half-eaten snacks in the fridge. But when I got to the 4th floor, I noticed something odd. Every single door was closed. No lights inside. No signs anyone had been there all day. I started vacuuming the hallway, but after a minute, I heard something faint. A knock. It wasn't loud, just a soft thud-thud coming from one of the rooms down the corridor. I froze and paused the vacuum. It was completely quiet again. I figured maybe I imagined it until I heard it again. It was definitely from the door marked Lab for C. I stared at it. It had one of those small wired glass windows near the top, but the lights were off inside. I stepped closer, thinking maybe someone stayed late and got locked in. But when I looked through the glass, I didn't see anything except outlines. Shelves, a sink, maybe some equipment. Then the light flicked on. Not the overhead lights, just a single desk lamp on the far wall. And in the moment it clicked on, I saw a figure just barely illuminated. It was a man, I think, standing completely, still near the back of the room, facing the wall. Not moving, not turning, just there. His posture was rigid, head slightly down, like he was being punished or praying. I stepped back, startled. My mind was racing. Who the hell was working at midnight in a dark lab with the door shut and the lights off? I knocked. No response. Knocked again, Harder, sir. Still nothing. Just the steady yellow glow of the desk lamp behind him. I was about to knock one more time when the lamp suddenly shut off again and the room went black dot. I got out of there. I went downstairs, called my supervisor, and asked if anyone was scheduled to be working overnight in Building 6. He said no. The last group locked up at 6:45 p.m. He double-checked the company log while I stayed on the phone and confirmed there were no overnight shifts approved for that building, especially not in any lab. I didn't go back upstairs. I finished the lower floors, skipped the 4th, and left early. Told myself I'd deal with it the next night. But the next night was worse. Same time, same floor. I stepped out of the elevator and noticed something immediately. The lights were already on, not just the hallway lights. The lab door was cracked open. That wasn't right. I approached it slowly, my cart creaking behind me. The door to lab for C was ajar about 6 inches, just enough to see in. Inside, I could see one of the chairs was overturned. A stool was lying on its side, and something sticky was smeared across the floor. Reddish brown, like spilled soda or blood. I didn't go in. I backed away, took the elevator straight down, and called building security. Told them there might have been a break-in. Maybe someone got hurt. When they arrived, they searched the building while I waited outside. They were in. There for maybe 20 minutes before the lead guard came back out. He said there was no one inside. No lights on, no overturned chairs, no stains on the floor, nothing. I didn't believe him until he offered to show me. I went up with him. The hallway was dark. The lab was locked. Everything was clean and untouched, like nothing had ever happened. He gave me this look like I'd wasted his time, and I didn't argue. I just nodded, said thank you, and left. The next day, I told my company I wasn't cleaning Building 6 anymore. No explanation, no apologies. I just told them they could reassign it or lose me. They didn't argue. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I've talked to 2 other overnight cleaners who got assigned to Building 6. One lasted 2 weeks. The other quit after 1 night. Neither would tell me why. All I know is there's something on that 4th floor, and whatever it is, it doesn't like being watched. I used to work overnight maintenance at a nursing home in upstate New York. The kind of place where the walls smell faintly like disinfectant, no matter how clean it is. And most of the residents have been there for years. The job was quiet fixing, light bulbs, checking boilers, unclogging sinks, whatever needed doing while everyone else was asleep. I liked the solitude, mostly. No bosses breathing down my neck. Just me and the hum of the building. The place was shaped like a horseshoe, with patient rooms lining each wing and a small central courtyard in the middle. From any hallway on the 1st floor, you could usually look out and see the courtyard through these big, square windows. This happened about 1.5 years ago. I was doing my usual rounds, a little past 2 a.m., when I got a call on the walkie from one of the nurses on the west wing. She said room 114 was complaining about someone standing outside their window. That didn't make much sense to me. Room 114 faced the courtyard, and the courtyard had a locked gate that only staff could access. Besides, it was February. No one in their right mind would be outside at 2 a.m. in the freezing cold, especially in scrubs, but I told her I'd check it out. I headed down the hallway, toolbox in hand, and knocked gently before letting myself into 114. Mr. Weller was sitting up in bed, her hair in curlers and her hands tucked under the blanket, like she was praying. She was 82, mostly sharp, but sometimes confused after dark. I asked her if everything was okay, and she nodded. Then she said, "He's gone now, but he was there for a long time." "Who?" I asked. She turned her eyes toward the window, slowly. "The man with the long face, the one who doesn't blink." I'll admit, it gave me a chill, but I walked over to the window and looked out. The courtyard was empty. Snow blanketed everything. No tracks, no movement. Just a few scattered branches waving in the wind under the courtyard lamp. I told her it was probably a shadow or something from the TV reflection, but she just shook her head and whispered he was real. He watched me. He didn't move at all. Said I'd keep an eye on it and let her get some sleep. She didn't say anything else, just kept staring at the window like she expected him to come back. I didn't think much more of it that night. Wrote up a report like I was supposed to, told the nurse it was probably nothing, and went back to my rounds. 2 nights later, same time, same call. Only this time, it wasn't just room 114. It was 3 residents on the first floor, all facing the courtyard. Each one said they saw a man standing at the window. The nurse who called it in said one of the patients was crying, said she thought it was death come to take her. Now, that kind of thing spreads. Old folks in these homes, they talk. They pass fear around like it's medicine. So part of me figured, this was just paranoia getting contagious. Still, I went out to the courtyard to check. I grabbed my coat, unlocked the gate, and stepped into the snow. It was bitter cold, and dead silent. I looked around with my flashlight. The windows to the rooms were all dark, except one room, 114. Her blinds were up, and the lamp inside was on. I could see Mrs. Weller sitting up in bed again, staring out like she was waiting for me to come back with news. I waved. She didn't wave back. But that wasn't the weird part. The weird part was her eyes weren't on me. They were fixed on something to my left. I turned, scanning the yard, and that's when I saw them footprints, fresh ones, leading from the gate to the edge of one of the windows, then back again. But the weirdest part, there were no shoes, just bare footprints in the snow, human feet, toes, arches, everything. No smearing, no drag marks, perfect impressions, like someone had stepped barefoot through the freezing courtyard, but no one was there. I followed them slowly, flashlight jittering in my hand. They ended about a foot from the glass of room 112. I looked inside. Dar, resident, was asleep. Then I heard it, a creak. I whipped around, shining the light toward the far end of the courtyard, half expecting to see someone sprinting away. But there was nothing, no sound, no movement. I backed out of the courtyard, locked the gate, and wrote another report. The next morning, the director called me into her office. She asked if I'd been talking to residents about seeing people at night. I told her about the reports, about the footprints. She didn't look surprised, just tired. Then she said something that still bothers me. This used to happen in the 90s too. Always in winter. Always the courtyard. We had someone jump the fence back then. A man who escaped from a facility 2 towns over. Said he liked to watch people sleep. I asked what happened to him. She said he died in police custody a few weeks later. But every few years, she added, we still get sightings. Always a man, always staring, never blinks. I asked her if she thought it was some kind of ghost. She just looked down and said, does it matter if the patients believe it? I didn't have an answer. All I know is this. I still work there, still walk that hallway, still peek into room 114 now and then. Mr. Weller passed away last spring, died in her sleep, and last week I got a call. Another resident reported someone standing outside their window. They said he had a long face, and he didn't blink. Back in 2019, I took a job working nights at a grocery distribution warehouse outside of Reno. Most people don't realize how much work goes into stocking shelves until you've spent 10 hours in a giant freezer stacking pallets at 2 in the morning. It was cold, exhausting, and lonely, but it paid better than anything else I could find at the time. The warehouse was massive. Dozens of aisles lined with racks 3 stories high, loaded with boxes of frozen meats, vegetables, desserts, anything that needed to be kept below zero. There were only a few of us on the night crew, and even fewer who worked inside the freezer unit. I volunteered for the freezer shifts. Less people, fewer distractions. And I didn't mind the cold, at least not at first. They gave us special suits and gloves for insulation, and we'd rotate in and out every hour to avoid frostbite. But even with all that gear, you could still feel the chill in your bones. It started about a month after I began the job. I was working in Sector D, way in the back of the freezer. It's one of those narrow aisles with steel racks on both sides that tower over you like cliffs. My headset crackled, and my lead told me to stack some pork shipments by the far wall and check on a temp sensor that had been giving off strange readings. I grabbed a pallet jack and headed over. The sensor was on the 3rd shelf, up near the ventilation pipe that always made weird groaning noises when the temperature dropped too low. I remember looking up and seeing my breath fog into the air like smoke. And then I noticed something strange. There was a handprint on the inside of the steel shelf. Not a glove mark, not smudges from moving boxes. A bare-hand human, 5 fingers, perfectly outlined in condensation. That made no sense. Nobody went barehanded in the freezer. You'd lose skin in minutes. I touched the print with my glove still fresh, not frozen over yet. I radioed it in, but the lead brushed it off. Said maybe someone from the last shift took their glove off by accident. I didn't argue, but something about it gnawed at me. Finished the sensor check, dropped the pork by receiving, tried to shake it off. The next night, I saw another handprint. This time, it was lower, closer to the ground. Smudged a bit, like the hand had dragged down the metal. I didn't report it. I just stood there, staring at it, feeling something twist in my gut. That kind of quiet where even the hum of the freezer felt too loud. By the end of the week, there were more. Always near the back, always bare hands, sometimes 1, sometimes 2. Once I found both palms side by side on the freezer door, like someone had been trying to push it open from inside. That door locks automatically. The only way in or out is with a badge swipe. And I checked. Nobody had swiped in besides me. That's when I started asking around, quietly. I didn't want to sound crazy, but one of the older guys, Ramon, pulled me aside. He didn't joke or smile, just said, "You're in D sector, right?" I nodded. He told me to never stay in there longer than necessary. Said a guy died in there a few years back. New hire. Got locked in during a system glitch and froze before they found him. They said he was trying to claw his way out. Told me they had to scrape his fingers off the inside of the door. I asked if that story was true. He looked at me, dead serious, and said, "I cleaned it up." After that, I couldn't go in without seeing things out of the corner of my eye. A shape ducking behind a rack. A shadow between pallets that disappeared when I turned. The worst was one night when I was alone in Sector D, doing an overtime shift. I bent down to pull a broken strap from under a pallet and heard breathing, slow, shallow, right behind me. I turned fast, nearly fell over. Nothing there, but I swear to you, I saw fog on the air. Not mine, somebody else's breath. I left that shift early, told them I was sick. They didn't argue. A few weeks later, I asked to be reassigned to dry storage. Management didn't ask. Questions, they've probably heard worse, but sometimes, even now, I'll walk past the freezer corridor and see frosty handprints on the door. Always fresh, always bare, and always facing inward, like someone's still in there, waiting to get out. I used to work night shifts as a monitoring tech at Ridgeview Psychiatric Hospital, a private facility in the hills just outside Asheville, North Carolina. It was one of those places you'd never notice unless you were looking for it, set back, off a winding road, behind a row of black pines, surrounded by fencing and old stone walls. The main building had been there since the 50s, and parts of it still felt like a relic from another era. Heavy doors, tiled halls, and fluorescent lights that buzzed just a little too loud. My job was to sit in the observation room and monitor camera feeds from the restricted wings, places that housed patients under suicide watch, or those with violent episodes. Nothing Hollywood about it. Just long hours staring at grainy night vision screens, logging any incidents, and pressing the call button if someone tried something. It was mostly quiet, until it wasn't. There's this wing at Ridgeview called Ward C. It's not for the criminally insane or anything, just long-term patients with severe dissociative conditions. Most of them stayed in their rooms at night, doors locked, lights dimmed. I was 2 months into the job when I first noticed the loop. It was around 3:17 a.m. I remember that exact time because I'd just marked it in the log. I was watching the feed for room 6C, an older man named Bernard, who'd been at Ridgeview for years. Quiet, no outbursts, no history of violence. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, hands folded in his lap, just staring toward the corner of the room. And then, all of a sudden, the feed jumped back, like rewinding a few seconds. At first I thought the system had glitched, but then it played again. Bernard sitting up straight, turning his head slowly, looking toward the corner. And again it looped, same motion, same second. I tried refreshing. The feed, same thing. It played that same 6-second clip on repeat, over and over, like the footage was stuck in time. I radioed maintenance and told them the camera might be bugging out. They said they'd check the server in the morning. I let it play and moved on. But just as I was turning my attention to another monitor, the loop broke. Bernard was suddenly standing right in the middle of the room, not walking, not turning, just standing completely still, facing the camera. His eyes were wide, his mouth slightly open, and his head was just barely tilted, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. And then he smiled, a slow, creeping smile that didn't match his face. I leaned closer. It wasn't just his expression, it was his posture. He looked off, like his limbs were hanging too loosely, like he was being held up by something behind him. I reached for the intercom to ask if he was all right, but before I could speak, the screen cut to black dot, just room 6, see all. The other feeds were fine, only his camera was out. I tried switching to an alternate angle, no luck. Then I heard a sound from down the hallway outside the monitor room, a sharp metallic clink, like a door unlocking. I stood up, walked to the small glass panel in the door, and peered out into the corridor. It was empty, silent. Then I heard footsteps, not rushed, just slow, deliberate steps, coming from the direction of Ward C. And then something even stranger. The overhead lights in the hallway began to flicker. First dim, then full brightness, then dark. Like something was walking beneath them and triggering the motion sensors. But there was no one there. I backed away from the glass, locked the monitor room door, grabbed the phone to call security. But the line was dead. That was the only time that ever happened. The landline in that room is hardwired. It's supposed to work even during power outages. I turned back to the monitors. Room 6C's camera was still black, but the hallway feed outside of it showed something. His door was open, wide open. That was impossible. All the doors are on magnetic locks, controlled from the nurse station. No one had released it, and yet there it was. Room 6C. Empty dot. I watched that feed for a full 2 minutes. No movement, no shadow. Then something moved on the edge of the frame. A flicker, a shape sliding past the lens, low to the ground, like someone crawling. I froze. Then every single feed on the monitor bank went dark, one after the other, until only the static hum remained. I don't remember how long I stood there. Could have been 10 seconds, could have been 10 minutes. Then the monitors blinked back on. All normal, every feed working, except 6C. That one showed Bernard, lying in bed, eyes closed, asleep, like nothing had happened. I waited for morning, didn't say a word. When the day crew came in, I told my supervisor there'd been a power flicker and maybe a loose connection on one of the cameras. He shrugged, made a note, and moved on. A week later, Bernard died in his sleep. Heart failure. No history of it. No warning, just gone. The nurses said he looked peaceful, but the woman who prepped his body later told me something else. Something she said off the record. She said his eyes had been wide open when they found him, and his face still smiling. Working the night shift can feel like a world apart. Quiet, slow, forgotten by the daylight. But sometimes, in that silence, something watches, something waits. And if you're not careful, you might come face to face with the kind of moment that never really leaves you. If these stories made you double-check the locks or glance over your shoulder, you're not alone. There are more true stories out there, more encounters, and I'll be here to share them with you. Subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you never miss what waits in the dark.